What makes a killer good in Dead by Daylight? That's a question I am going to try to answer right here, but first let me say what is good in my game, what is good, fam? And real quick, the term good is somewhat subjective, so take everything in this video I say with a grain of salt and keep the respect in the comments to a maximum. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. 900 subs ? So obviously the job of the survivors is to repair the generators and escape, and the killer's job is to, I don't think I have to elaborate on that. And there are multiple different categories that a killer's power can have. There's mobility, stealth, health state management, information, defense, slowdown, one-shotting, setup, utility dumping, and anti-loop oriented powers. Instead of saying anti-loop the whole time, I'm just gonna say anti. So when you hear me say anti, I mean anti-loop. But there are two main big styles that all killers fit into: chase and then slow down and gen defense. First, let's talk about chase powers. A killer having a chase power doesn't mean they have a good one. For example, Nurse has a chase oriented power where she breaks the game and teleports through every object on the map, which obviously makes her the strongest killer in the game. But you know who else has a chase oriented power? The Trickster, who slows down to throw knives at you and he has to hit you with 6 or 7 to injure you once. Trickster has way less availability, overall a weaker power, and although he has great perks and add-ons, he is very weak without said perks and add-ons. Gen defense and slowdown powers. These characters can go from really good killers to really bad ones. For example, Cenobite has great slowdown built in where the box must be managed by survivors, and if it is not, he gets a strong passive slowdown ability where everybody gets touched by chains. Pause. And we got slowdown like Onryo, which takes maybe 10 seconds to counter, and you only have to press R1 twice, and you most likely won't even need to do it because it's so weak that it's almost never a threat unless the Onryo is specifically playing into that playstyle. But let's go back to the categories. One killer can have multiple categories which can either make or break a character. Demogorgon has information with channeling the abyss, mobility with his teleport, very weak but stealth after the teleport, anti-loop with the shred attack, and utility dumping with shredding the pallets. He is arguably the most balanced killer to play in Dead by Daylight and is really fun to play as and against. Then we have Freddy, who has anti with the snares, slight stealth with the dream world, and mobility with his gen teleport. However, he is much weaker and he is so boring to go against. Some killers thrive on actually having less categories rather than more, such as Blight and Nurse, the two strongest killers in the game. They both only have 2 things going for them, and that is mobility and anti-loop. But killers like Demogorgon can have lots of categories and be a good design, and the best design in the game in my opinion is Albert Wesker, who has slowdown with the infection, anti with the bounce, mobility with the bounce, information after the sprays are used, and one-shotting whenever a survivor reaches full infection. I'm pretty sure you guys get the gist of these categories and styles I'm talking about. So let me rank them from strongest to weakest and least fun to most fun. Weakest and least fun will be at the bottom, while strongest and most fun will be at the top. And take this with a grain of salt also, as fun is also subjective, so this will all be my opinion. From in order going 1 to 10, I have mobility, stealth, anti, one-shotting, health state management, utility dumping, slowdown, setup, information, and defense. I will now go over each category briefly. At number 1, I have mobility, and it's the ability to be mobile. Who would've fucking guessed? Killers that can really get from point A to point B. Killers in this category are Blight, Hillbilly, Wraith, and Dredge, just to name a few. These killers have a great job getting into chases fast, getting to generators fast, and using their mobility in chase are mostly unique and fun to play against. All of these killers, other than the Blight, are good killers that everybody can pick up easily after a few games. And I say other than Blight because Blight is the second strongest killer in the game, so he's not just good, he's crazy, and he's not easy to pick up like the other killers that I'm listing. I think being mobile is a big factor of what makes a killer strong, and it's just fun to be fast, which killers like Trapper don't have, disregarding Bloodlust. The second category I have is stealth. Killers that have almost zero problem getting close to survivors without them noticing for free hits and the potential for crazy stealth plays. Killers like Wraith, Dredge, Ghostface, and Myers, just to name some. The stealth to get close for free hits is a luxury that killers just don't have, other than these stealth killers. Even when playing Wesker, who's really good and has an amazing design, people hear you from 40 meters away, so it's almost impossible to walk up and get a free hit. Even though in general simply having stealth isn't enough to make a killer good, but these killers tend to have either something to help them in chase or a insta-down ability to insta-down the survivors, and those abilities tied in with the stealth is what actually makes the stealth good, not just the stealth itself. If you give Trapper a 0-meter tear radius, he still won't be a good killer. At 3, I have Anti. Anti is obviously, stronger than stealth, but it's not as fun to go against sometimes. That's why I have it under stealth. Killers with anti-loop are Nurse, Artist, Blight, and Spirit, just to name a small majority. These killers are very strong due to their power being oriented around the most important part of the game, which is the chase. These killers tend to be really fun to play as, but sometimes can be a snooze fest going against them. But being able to chase survivors and have a better chance than the rest of the killers of downing them quickly translates to survivors taking longer to do their their objective. Mix that with gen regression perks, and that's less survivors able to do gens, and usually equals a somewhat easy win for said killer. But just because their power is anti doesn't mean it's strong. Don't forget, Clown is also an anti-killer, but he does fine in the 1v1 but fails to get pressure anywhere else. At 4, I have one-shot ability. Killers that can rely on the power to insta-down any survivor if the survivor doesn't play perfectly around the killer using their ability perfectly. Killers with one-shots are Oni, Hillbilly, Bubba, Ghostface, and Myers, just to name a couple. I have this category on a higher side, although people would beg to differ. Nobody just wants to get one shot when the killer is supposed to hit you twice, but all of these said killers, they either have to earn their one shot towards you, or you can literally see it coming right in front of you, and there's counterplay, and you must counterplay it accordingly. Not only that, but I'm sure anyone with more than 100 hours enjoys playing against these killers. The threat of being insta-downed by a killer, that takes good planning or skill, and is a fun feeling when you're playing against these type of killers and you outplay them. At 5, I have health state management. The only two killers that are here is Legion and Plague, as their powers are strictly to manage the survivor's health states and keep them injured all game. These are some killers that are really fun to play, but almost a nightmare to play against. And not a nightmare because they're strong, but because Plague at solo queue is almost a guaranteed L, because solo queue teammates always expunge infection. They always get rid of it, give the Plague her power, and Legion just keeps deep wounding everybody, which takes like 10 to 20 seconds just to get rid of, and then you have to heal up just for the Legion to run past you and injure you again. Legion is a decent killer, and Plague is a strong one, but facing killers like this isn't fun, especially when they're running full injured and slowdown builds. And that's why I have it at 5. At 6 is utility dumping, which, if you're confused, is the act of getting rid of survivor pallets and stuff of that sort. Killers in this category are Demogorgon, Nemesis, Bubba, and Knight, to name a small fraction. I don't really have to go into detail anymore about this because it is pretty self-explanatory. Killers that shred through pallets, Demo shreds through them literally, Knight can make a guard do it, Nemesis breaks them super fast, and even deny windows, which is even more survivor utility that is being dumped. These killers can be fun to play against, but it just depends on like which one you're going against and how hard they're actually trying to win, but more often than not, these killers are pretty fun to play against. At 7th, I have slowdown. Killers that have the ability to make survivors stop doing generators to take care of said action, slowing down the gen speed. These killers are Pig, Wesker, and Cenobite, to name a small chunk. Slowdown is usually a very strong asset because it's made to be. What I mean by that is Doctor technically has slowdown with the snap out of it, but it stops the survivor for like 10 seconds, as Doctor's kit isn't supposed to be slowdown. It's supposed to be information and anti-loop. These slowdown killers aren't too fun to play against, as Cenobite constantly pushes you off the box, or constantly harass you with the chains because the survivor didn't get it, or having a pig tunnel you off of boxes so you died to a head pop. It isn't necessarily the most enjoyable gameplay. These killers are usually not the funnest to go against. 8th is setup. Killers like Trapper, Hag, and Ghostface come to mind. No offense to these killers, but there isn't really much to say about this category, as it's pretty self-explanatory. Ghostface has to 99 people, Hag and Trapper must spend time putting down an AoE to defend, and that's about it. At 9th, I have information. This tier is low because unless your main power is information, such as Doctor, who has great info, the info isn't really going to be too good. Such as Wesker and Nemesis. When you get a survivor infected, they have to use a spray or syringe, and then you're gonna see the killer instinct, but who's gonna see that and go, yeah, let me drop my chase to stop guarding these gens to go to the opposite side of the map to chase a person who is gonna be fully healthy by the time I get there? Nobody. Demogorgon has a channeling of the abyss, but that is a little situational, as none of my players is gonna be walking around holding it long enough to get enough value, unless you're bringing the coach whistle. Why am I talking so fast? I'm sorry. Unless you are bringing the coach whistle add-on, or you're guarding a totem or a 3-gen. That is why this category is so low. And the last, and certainly most least, at 10th, I have defense. These are the most boring and mind-numbing killers to play against in the game, by far, in my opinion. These killers is just Knight and Stone Merchant. They are solely made for defending hooks or 3-gens, which is the most boring way to play Dead by Daylight, and forever will be the most boring way to play Dead by Daylight. Nobody is saying, let's go, it's a Knight, or yes, I really wanted to play against the Skull Merchant, the lady who doesn't even sell skulls. Like, need I say more? The strongest and most fun killers are in stealth, mobility, and anti categories, and one-shot categories. But instead of just using categories to decide, why don't we look how they work in-game? In my opinion, Huntress is the most fun killer in the game to play against, and I'm always screaming, sometimes without the S, when I'm getting chased by her. And she is a strong killer, who is super rewarding when you start to develop skill. And in my opinion, Nurse is one of the most boring killers to face. Although she is the strongest killer in the game, a lot of people do like to tell me they enjoy going against her because they like looping her and trying to counter what she does. And I just want to ask, like, do you guys go against the same nurses I go against, bro? Every other fucking time I'm going against Nurse is fucking super elf, bro, I swear. And her power is anti-loop like Huntress, but I feel the reason we all love going against Huntress is because her power is risk and reward and takes skill. Nurse's power is rewarding and you must have skill, but there is not much risk behind it. If you miss one blink, just wait for the second blink, because boom, recharge, you're good to go, blink through anything on the map. As Huntress, if you miss a hatchet, a survivor can make a window or a pallet or receive a body block. There is risk to it, but being able to pressure a whole team from range is strong enough to make the risk be worth it when you're playing Huntress. But what makes it risky is the counterplay to it. Huntress slows down, makes 2 audible noises to show the survivors what she is doing and what she is about to do. Wesker slightly slows down, gives an audible warning when he was about to use his power so the survivor can see what he is doing. Demogorgon slightly slows down and gives an audible warning so the survivor knows what the killer is doing, letting the survivor react accordingly, and the fact that this happens in Chase is what makes it fun and balanced. Nurse has an audible warning, but she can teleport through walls, which means being able to hear and see the killer is almost irrelevant. Spirit has directional audio, and you know what she's about to face, but not every DBD player has a good fucking $200 headset, and relying on the speed of how fast your thumbs can react to your ears or your fingers can react to your ears isn't easy to everybody. And then there's Bubba with a one-shot, but it's super counterable and you can see it coming from a mile away, and the counterplay is easy. So after going through everything I wanted to talk about, don't get me wrong, I didn't talk about every little detail and I didn't analyze every killer detail, but I wanted you guys to get the gist of what I think the answer is to this question and what makes a killer strong in DBD. And I think being healthy and fun is a big part of what makes a killer quote unquote good. And the 6 questions that I must answer to answer the full question is this: how many categories does this killer's power cover? Is this said power strong in one area, or is it decent in a lot of areas? Is the power counterable / reactable to all players? Is the counterplay to this killer too easy or too hard? Is this killer's power going to get outdated? And is this killer going to take skill? Huntress, Demogorgon, Wesker, Bubba, Oni, and Dredge are some of the killers that check all of these boxes. And I think these killers are healthy, strong, and fun, and are good for DBD. They are either really strong in one area like Huntress and Bubba, or decently strong in a lot of areas like Demogorgon and Wesker. And if you make a killer that checks all of these boxes, either you're a fan or if you're behaving yourself, I think this is what makes a killer good in DBD. To answer all those questions, and if it's a yes to every single question, you have made a good killer. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and until next time.